Everyone has a past, but not everyone has the courage to face theirs, especially when facing it could cost them everything they has worked so hard to build. Today, I want to tell you the story of Stephine. Stephine got admission to study mass communication at the University of Lagos. She left her hometown in Enugu to live with her aunt in Lagos, Auntie Ngozi. She left her mother's watchful eyes, her father's strict curfews, and the church usher who always seemed to be looking at her whenever the pastor preached about fornication. She was free, and she intended to enjoy every single second of that freedom. In her first year, she met a girl called Vivian, a Port Harcourt babe who wore Brazilian hair, smelled like expensive perfume, and always seemed to have money, even though nobody ever saw her go to class. Vivian became her closest friend, her guide, her tour of a Lagos she had never seen. Before long, Stephine was going to clubs on Victoria Island on Thursday nights. She was sipping drinks she could not even pronounce. She was taking pictures in outfits her mother would have fainted looking at. And the likes were flooding in, the attention was flooding in, and so were the men. There was Tunde, an Abuja big boy who drove a Benz and called her baby like it cost him nothing. There was Jeff, an older man who took her on her first trip to Dubai. There was Kunle, the music producer who promised her a future and delivered only heartbreak. There was Emmanuel, a married man who told her his wife didn't understand him, and she, in her naivety and loneliness, believed him. One man after another, one night after another, one bad decision stacked on top of another bad decision. But here's what nobody tells you about that kind of life. It feels incredible until it doesn't. By her final year in university, Stephine was exhausted, not just physically. She was empty in a way that no amount of clubbing or attention could fill. She would come back to her hostel room at 4 in the morning, sit on her bed, and cry without even knowing why. She had everything she thought she wanted, and she felt like she had nothing. That is the cruelest kind of poverty, the poverty of the soul. It was a random Wednesday afternoon. Stephine was in the market buying provisions when she heard music coming from a church nearby. Now, in Lagos, there is always a church nearby. This is not unusual, but something about this particular sound made her stop. She stood outside the gate for almost 5 minutes before she walked in. She doesn't know why she went in. She cannot explain it even today. All she knows is that she sat at the back and a woman was preaching, and that woman looked directly at her, or at least it felt that way, and said, "There is someone here today who is tired. Not your body, your spirit is tired, and God is saying, come home. Just come home." Stephine broke down in tears. Not the elegant kind of tears that make your mascara run attractively, the ugly kind, the kind where your shoulders shake and you cannot breathe properly, and a stranger beside you puts their hand on your back and says, "Let it out, sister, let it out." She gave her life to Christ that Wednesday afternoon, and from that moment, Stephine began to change. She stopped clubbing, she deleted numbers, she returned designer gifts, she joined the choir at a new church she found near her house, and she threw herself into it, not because anyone forced her, but because she had finally found something real to hold on to. She graduated, got a job at a media company, and committed herself fully to her new life. She did not look back. At least, she tried not to. 3 years after her conversion, at a midweek Bible study, Stephine met Chukwemeka. He was tall, quiet, and he had the kind of face that made you feel safe just looking at it. He was an engineer. He led the men's fellowship. He had never been married, had no children, and by every account was exactly the kind of man a woman prays for when she is serious about her life. He noticed her. She noticed him. They started talking after service one evening, and within weeks it was clear to everyone, including the pastor, that something was growing between them. Chukwemeka was intentional. He was the kind of man who said what he meant and meant what he said. On the 4th month of their friendship, he sat her down and told her clearly, "Stephanie, I see you. I see your love for God. I see your character. I want to pursue this seriously. I want to know if you are open to that." She was open, more than open. They courted for 1 year, one beautiful, disciplined, God-centered year. And at the end of it, Chukwemeka went to her father in Enugu with drinks and presented his intentions properly. In November of that year, they got married. It was a beautiful wedding. Their church was packed, their mothers cried, their friends danced. The jollof rice was the kind that made you want a second plate before you had finished the first. And Stephanie stood at that altar and made her vows, and she meant every single word. But there was one thing she had not done, something she had pushed so far down inside herself that she had almost convinced herself it didn't matter anymore. She had never told Chukwemeka about her past, not the full truth of it anyway. When he had asked her once, gently, about her life before Christ, she had simply said, "I was not living right, but God found me." And he had nodded and never pushed further because he was that kind of man. He trusted her. She told herself it was better this way, that the past was the past, that God had forgiven her, that there was no reason to burden a good man with things that no longer existed. She did not know that some things from the past do not stay buried simply because you decide to move on. 6 months into the marriage, Stephanie became pregnant. The joy in that household was indescribable. Chukwemeka bought her a bouquet of flowers on a Tuesday for no reason other than he was happy. Her mother started calling every other day. Her mother began discussing names. At 10 weeks, she miscarried. It was devastating, but they held each other, prayed, and told themselves that it was one of those things. The doctor said it was common. They trusted God and they moved forward. A year later, she was pregnant again. This time they were more careful, more prayerful. They told almost no one. They waited until she was 12 weeks before they told family. At 14 weeks, the baby was gone. The silence that entered their home after that second loss was the kind of silence that is louder than noise. Chukwemeka held his wife while she cried, but she could see it in his eyes. The confusion, the pain, the quiet questions he was too kind to ask out loud. They went to the hospital. They ran tests. Everything came back normal. The doctors found no medical reason for the losses. They advised more tests, more monitoring. They tried again. The 3rd pregnancy came 2 years later. This time, they fasted, they prayed, they anointed her belly with oil. Their pastor laid hands on her. The women's fellowship in their church put her on a prayer list. They did everything they knew how to do. At 11 weeks, the baby was gone. 3 pregnancies, 3 losses. Stephanie was breaking. Not just emotionally, she was breaking spiritually. She began to wonder if God was punishing her. She began to revisit her past in her mind, like old crime scenes she was being forced to walk through again. She stopped singing in the choir because she felt like a hypocrite standing before God. She stopped sleeping properly. She stopped eating well. And Chukwemeka, bless that man, Chukwemeka stood by her. He never raised his voice, he never blamed her, but she could see the sadness aging him, and that somehow was more painful than anything else. It was her aunt, Auntie Ngozi, who suggested they go and see the prophet. Now, Stephanie was not the kind of person who ran to prophets for everything. She had seen too many people be deceived by men who used the name of God for money. But she was desperate, and her aunt was insistent, so she went, alone, without telling Chukwemeka, because she wasn't sure what she would hear and she wanted to process it first. The prophet was an elderly man, quiet, unassuming. His church was small, a simple building with white plastic chairs and a wooden altar, nothing dramatic about him at all. He prayed with her. Then he looked at her and said something that made the ground shift beneath her feet.
He said, "There is a covenant over your womb. A man you were with in your past, not a man who loved you, but a man who used you, made an agreement with dark forces. Every time you lose a child, he gains something. Your pain is feeding his progress, and until that cord is broken and truth is spoken, your womb will not be free. Stephanie sat in that white plastic chair and felt every hair on her body stand up, because she knew exactly who he was talking about. Emmanuel, the married man from her university days. Emmanuel, who she had later heard after they stopped seeing each other, had suddenly gone from being a struggling businessman to owning 3 properties in Lekki within 2 years. Emmanuel, who had always made her feel like there was something not quite right about him, but she had been too young and too foolish to listen to that instinct. The prophet did not know Emmanuel's name, he did not know Stephanie's history, but he described the man's face, described the nature of their relationship, and said something that sealed it. He said, "The last time you were with this man, something was taken from you, something physical, and it was used." Stephanie could not breathe. She drove home in silence. She sat in her car outside her gate for 45 minutes, and then she began to cry because she knew what the prophet had said next, and those words were the most terrifying words she had ever heard in her life. He had said, "Your healing cannot begin until your husband knows the truth, all of it. God cannot fix what is still hidden." She chose a Sunday evening, after church, after they had eaten, after the house was quiet and it was just the 2 of them in their sitting room with the TV on low. She turned the TV off, and she said, "Emeka, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear all of it before you respond." She told him everything. She told him about Vivian and the clubs. She told him about the men, not all the details, but the truth. She told him about Emmanuel. She told him what the prophet had said. She told him why she had hidden it, and she told him that hiding it had been wrong, and she was sorry. She told him all of it, and then she went quiet. Chukwuemeka did not speak for a very long time. When he finally stood up from the couch, he walked to their bedroom and closed the door. Stephanie sat in the sitting room alone. She did not go after him. She understood that he needed space. She prayed quietly, and she waited. She waited for 2 hours. At some point, she heard him crying in the bedroom, a grown man crying. The sound of it went straight through her like a knife. She pressed her hand over her mouth so she wouldn't make a sound. At close to midnight, the bedroom door opened. Chukwuemeka came and sat back down across from her. His eyes were red. His face looked like he had been through something that had taken 10 years from him. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I am angry, Adaeze. I will not pretend I am not. I am angry that you hid this from me. I am angry that I did not know. I am angry that I have been praying and believing and the full picture was not in front of me." She nodded. She deserved that. He said, "But I married you before God, and whatever we are facing, we face it together. I am not going anywhere." Stephanie broke down again, the kind of tears that are not sadness, they are relief and gratitude and shame and love all mixed together into something that has no name. He held her, and they stayed like that for a long time. With the truth now in the open, they went back to the prophet, together this time. The prophet prayed over them. He led them through a process of spiritual deliverance and renunciation. Stephanie, out loud, with her husband beside her, renounced every ungodly covenant she had entered into knowingly and unknowingly. She repented before God for the lies she had told. She released forgiveness for Emmanuel, for herself. It was not a short process, it was not a comfortable process, but when they left that day, Stephanie told her husband that something felt different inside her, like a heaviness she had carried for so long she had forgotten it was there, had finally been lifted off. 8 months later, she was pregnant again. This time, they did not tell anyone until she was 20 weeks. At 40 weeks and 2 days, Stephanie gave birth to a healthy baby boy, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 2 full lungs that announced his arrival to an entire maternity ward. They named him Chukwugozi, God has blessed me. Stephanie tells this story now because it is not easy to tell. It is still one of the hardest things she has ever spoken out loud. But she tells it because she knows she cannot be the only woman sitting in a marriage, carrying a secret, watching her blessings slip away and not understanding why. She wants you to know hidden things have weight. They press down on everything around them, on your health, on your marriage, on your womb, on your peace. She is not telling you to go and broadcast your past to the whole world, but she is telling you that the person who stands before you with God, the person who is believing alongside you for your miracles, they deserve to know what they are praying against. Truth is not always comfortable, but it is always free. Stephanie is free now, and so is her womb. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment below. Have you or someone you know experienced something like this? Let's talk about it. God bless you. See you in the next one.